The royals, of course, remain on the front pages this morning after the Queen's statement last night on the future of Harry and Meghan. Orf you go, but one is not amused, says The Sun. Go if you must is the Mail's headline after the Queen said she would have preferred the couple to stay as full-time royals. And similar on the Mirror, I want you to stay, but you're free to go. Well, royal editor Russell Myers and royal photographer Arthur Edwards are back with me this morning. So the Queen is saying, yeah, you can go, but Arthur, it's with great reluctance, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I'm sure there were tears in the room yesterday about that, you know, because Harry must be completely torn. You know, he's got all these fabulous charities here some of them he started, and they depend on him for a lot of them for their funds, which is probably tearing him. And I think, but I think he will come back quite a lot. And
do you? Do you think?
Yeah, I do. I think he
will
will come. I think he will not abandon those charities. I know that boy. He won't. He will not do it. He will just. He cares too much, especially about the kids. Yeah.
Yeah. So it might be. We're not saying cheerio to them then, really. Or are we?
Well, I think Arthur's right. I think Harry will come back a lot more than Meghan. I think,
right.
You know, by the very fact that she's gone over there, the dogs have been flown over. Harry will probably join her at the end of the week.
That's a big sign. The dogs.
It is a big sign that she's obviously putting roots down there.
Sure.
And Arthur's quite right that Harry would have been very, very upset when faced with his grandmother, his father, and his brother, who, let's face it, he's let down appallingly over the last few days.
It is a tough one, isn't it? Because also, you know, Meghan's got charitable works here as well. And how are you going to balance that?
You know, just in the last few months, she was given a range of patronages which had been handed to her by the Queen. One of those was the National Theatre that the Queen had for decades. Now, the optics of Harry trying to punt her out to Disney doesn't look very good when she should have been more worried about the National Theatre, you know, grassroots organisations in Swindon rather than Hollywood. And I think it's a really sad turn of events.
Do you think, though, that say this all goes through and it all happens and there they are and they make their base in Canada where their dogs are and their child, we should say as well, not just the dog, and then they change their minds? Can they, do you think? Is there a way back, perhaps?
I think Harry might, but I don't know about her. I think she really wants to...
She's had enough?
I think she... Yeah. I mean, if you think where they live at Windsor, it's a pretty boring place, you know, for them down there, quiet, and she's used to the fast life in Toronto. And also, I mean, I think she still hankers to do a bit more in show business, you know.
Maybe.
And there's nothing wrong with that, because I mean, you know, why should... Yeah, it's a job, and it's a good job, and she was good at it, and I think maybe she wants to probably explore that more.
Do you think that the royal family will be diminished by the fact that they've gone? Because they were, I mean, you think back to that wedding and the goodwill and how happy everyone was for them, and she was, both of them, where you thought, this is great, this is a whole new, this is taking the royal family through into 2020 and right the way through. I
think it will be, and you know, me personally, I'll miss Harry tremendously.
You really like him?
I love him. I think he's an absolute gem, as far as I'm concerned. He's a star of the royal family. And I think it's sad that we're losing him, and I feel bad about it because, as I say, I've had some great times with him, some fabulous pictures with him, and seeing him, you know, with kids, how he cares so much. He's got this compassion of his mother more than any of them.
See, it's really interesting because we just see snapshots, don't we? I mean, usually taken by you, Arthur. Or we see news footage, and Russell, both of you are there, seeing what it's like and seeing how they react. And they are brilliant with young people, with crowds, with, you know, there is that really lovely, informal, very much like Princess Diana.
Well, this is my feeling, and I think that there's absolutely no winners in it. I mean, that Meghan and Harry may feel that they have been, you know, set free from the shackles of royal life. However, the patronages that they've taken on, the people that rely on them, you know, I think the British public are going to really miss them. And, you know, people in the Commonwealth, that they go on these amazing tours, that we see them, and they're just fantastic on the world stage, and it's an absolutely crying shame that they felt this way.
It's interesting as well, because this is personal. I mean, the Queen's statement was very personal. She talked about her family. It was more like, you know, when she had to biff Andrew, and she had to, and gosh, nobody's talking about him anymore. He's the only one kicking his height over this. And that was done as the Queen, wasn't it? But this was very much a saddened grandmother saying, we're going to miss you.
Yeah, well, the very base of it...
We don't want you to go.
Yeah.
No!
We don't want you to go. And imagine when she said that to him, he must have been choked.
Oh,
because,
I know.
You know, he's much loved. I mean, he's loved by the Queen. He's loved by his father was there, and his father adores him. You know, obviously, he's his father, he's his son.
Yeah.
It must have been really difficult. I bet, as I say, there was a lot of sadness there, but it was brilliant of the Queen to say, Harry, if you've got to go, you want to go, go, but we don't want you to.
And it seems, I mean, the brothers were talking about the fact they made that statement yesterday saying, actually, no, William was not bullying. Bullying was the wrong thing to say. But clearly, there's been a schism there, hasn't there?
Clearly, and I think that,
you
know, the language that was used was unfortunate, that the bullying, because they've done things with mental health. They've made huge strides in that arena. Good as well, and it's very, very important to them that it's not seemed to be that relationship. But undoubtedly, they've had a falling out. And again, that's another very, very sad situation of this, you know.
So did they just go to Canada and that's it?
Well,
sooner rather than later?
I think for Canada and then perhaps the United States. I think maybe they'll head that way as well.
Sure.
I think you know. I mean, you know, they've got to find ways to earn money now, obviously, because they say they want to be self-funded.
The money's a huge one, actually, because there's all the implications about security. And
well, the security, the Canadians will pay for that. I mean, when I go to Canada with the Royals, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police take over completely.
Right.
They absolutely. I mean, they drive the car. They sit in the car with the Royals. The British police will be there probably as advisors or liaison, but it's the Canadians will do that.
Well, we'll find out more about
because we can't, you know, we can't not have security. I mean,
indeed, of course.
I mean, you know, if Archie got kidnapped, there'd be uproar. What's the security doing? You know?
Exactly. No. In just a moment, we are live in Toronto with the Mail Online's chief investigative reporter. That's Laura Collins. First, though, this is what the Canadian PM Justin Trudeau had to say overnight. Interesting. Laura, there seems to be a little bit of backtracking there from Justin Trudeau. First of all, we're told, oh, absolutely, Canada will pick up the security bill, not a problem. But he's kind of, rolling back on that a little.
Yes, hi, good morning. Yeah, he certainly seemed to imply yesterday that Canada would foot the bill and had privately reassured members of the royal family. But the reality is this is a Commonwealth country, but taxpayers don't necessarily want to pay for Harry and Meghan. The loyalty extends to the Queen, but does it extend past that? There's a question. I mean, it's a substantial bill. Harry and Meghan do seem very determined to monetize on their royal brand, which they have trademarked. And I think it's not something they can take for granted. I think they have to be very careful how far they push the welcome that Canada seems keen to extend to them.
She does, though, feel obviously very at home in Canada. She worked there for a long, long time. And I think more importantly, feels very safe there. It's like a little haven.
I think so, yes. And I mean, there's not the sort of paparazzi culture perhaps here that there is elsewhere. Meghan certainly has a lot of personal connections. She lived here for 7 years when she filmed Suits. And her best friend, of course, Jessica Mulroney, is here, the daughter-in-law of the former Prime Minister Brian. And I think Jessica has been quite a key figure in the way that this has gone in general, really. I mean, nobody's really closer to Meghan beyond her mother and obviously Prince Harry. And her history is, as she said, PR, marketing, brands. I mean, it'd be hard to beat being overseeing the growth of the brand that is Sussex Royal.
No, that's very true, and that is something, as you said, that they'll have to do because they want to make their own way. This is where it gets all a little bit of a grey area, I guess. You mentioned the Commonwealth. Yes. Interestingly, this whole situation has put that under the spotlight. I think the last time there was a referendum, or there was a poll, not a referendum, there was a poll, about half of Canadians said after the Queen is no longer with us, they are not that keen on continuing being part of the Commonwealth. That's very interesting and very telling, isn't it?
It is, yes, absolutely. And there certainly have been rumblings that when Harry and Meghan made this announcement, some people were certainly saying, well, if they're going to quit the royal family, why don't we quit too as a country? So, as I say, Canada definitely has a place in their hearts, but how much of a place in Canada's heart they have, it kind of will depend, I think, a lot on how they manage this transitionary process, I suppose, and what they carve out. And they certainly can't take it for granted, and I think they do have to tread carefully. I mean, I think probably a striking thing is that the Queen's statement, you know, in just 6 sentences, did manage to take some of the heat, perhaps, out of it. I think people will be very much guided by her response, and you know, it's a response of sadness, but it's also one of support and of wanting to make this work. It's clearly not a situation anyone would have hoped for, but she's determined to make it work, and I think Harry and Meghan would do well to be very much guided and not kick against that.
Yeah, because obviously that's what it's like. I mean, we're talking about the royals as an institution, but it comes down to it, it's a family that have fallen out quite dramatically.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. I mean, this is a pretty big schism, as you were talking about earlier. And I mean, it's terribly sad. There is a sadness about it, but there's also, I think, probably a classic kind of House of Windsor approach now, which is, look, this has happened, we'll deal with it. The Queen has made it clear she wants it to be dealt with quickly. I think people over here, as people back home, are kind of waiting and watching and seeing just what that means and what this new role will be. I mean, it's the thorny issue of finances. There's just no getting away from that.
That's very true. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm sure we'll be talking to you over the next coming days and weeks. Thank you very much indeed, Laura.